what would the impact of an oil spill be on the polar bear? You are America's leading expert on the polar bear. What is your judgment as to the impact of an oil spill on their habitat?
The impact of an oil spill on polar bears would depend on the size of the spill, the currents, the winds that would distribute the oil after the spill. All of those things would have to be taken into account, and we don't have data on those things. But what we do have data on is that the effect of oil on polar bears is in a wild environment where they don't have access to strong medical veterinary care, is likely to be fatal. So
it could be a disaster.
If a number of polar bears were affected, they would probably die, and to the extent that that number is large, it could be a big problem.
Okay, thank you, Dr. AMSTRUP, very much. Mr. Hall, would you mind if Secretary Kempthorne made a decision which postponed the decision on the leasing of the Chukchi leases until you made your decision?
It wouldn't impact what I'm doing at all, so it'd be his decision, and whatever he wants to do is fine with me.
Mr. Luthi, would you mind if Secretary Kempthorne made a decision that guaranteed that Mr. Hall's decision
Mr. Chairman,
preceded the decision which you are tasked with making?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, as I've stated, I'm confident that we have done all we needed to do.
No, I didn't ask you that question. I asked, would you object if Secretary Kempthorne decided to allow Mr. Hall to make his decision first before you announced your decision?
Mr. Chairman, certainly the Secretary is my boss. That would be his decision.
That would be his decision. And so you would accept that?
Yes, sir, if he should do so. Okay. If new information were available and he should make such a decision?
Well, there is new information available, and that is that Mr. Hall is not going to be able to make his decision unless something happens that once again keeps the order in place that had been decided upon, which is that Mr. Hall would decide first on the polar bear and the protections needed for the polar bear. Mr. Hall mentioned earlier that he was somewhat uncomfortable as a biologist trying to make a political decision. But the problem is just the opposite. We have political players confronting a scientific decision, and the chief decision maker is the Secretary of the Interior, Mr. Kempthorne, who could turn this upside down decision right side up in a nanosecond if he wanted to. All he has to do is say, let's use common sense. Let us ensure that we understand that extinction is forever. And we must make that decision first before we send the oil and gas industry out into the critical habitat to break up the polar bear ice. So while I appreciate the testimony that both of you have presented to us today, in the end, if this is not fixed, it is Mr. Kempthorne who is to blame. I hope he understands the importance of his decision. I fear he does not, because this is now a looming threat that has not been dealt with by the Department of Interior. In the end, man can adapt, but the bear cannot. We can act to prevent global warming, but the bear cannot. We can develop alternatives to oil. The bear cannot. When the ice is gone, man cheers about new commercial opportunities for oil and gas drilling. The bear starves and drowns. I have been hoping for common sense from the Department of Interior and from Secretary Kempthorne, but I have heard that all too common abandonment of common sense here today. We are going to have to redouble our efforts on this committee and in this Congress to head off the extinction of the polar bear. If this decision is delayed in making a determination as to drilling in the Chukchi Sea, we will still be years from the first barrel of oil ever coming from the ocean. But if we get this sequence wrong in terms of the protection of the polar bear, we will be accelerating the day when the polar bear will be extinct. And I do not think that that is something that the American people want to see. So I thank both of you for being here today, and I call upon